the one that sticks out the most, of course, is Diary of a Madman by Ozzy Osbourne. This album's for me, I guess it was 7 years old. It's funny because I remember my brother was, really into like the British metal like invasion. Like it was, Black Sabbath, Ozzy, and Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, all that. And my mom did not want me listening to this stuff, right? And looking at the album covers or nothing. Like she, made sure that my brother hid those records, right? So how that got discovered is that we were at my uncle's. So I was 7, maybe 8 years old, and I was looking through his albums, and I found Diary of a Madman, and it just stuck right out to me. Because I'd seen a couple of like Kiss and Gene Simmons, the blood spitting and that, I found it really intriguing. But that album cover with Ozzy, with all the torn clothes, with the cathedral castle background, he's covered in blood. He's basically, he's this demonic figure. I was just like, it just struck a chord with me. So, opened up the album. There's all the hieroglyphics and stuff, and it's I'm not an evil guy, but that evil persona just like it just mesmerized me, right? And I think what really got to me was even before I even listened to the album, is that my uncle said, "Hey, it's like sneak that home if you can. Basically, we'll put it in the car in the back seat, give it to your brother because I know he's got the first Ozzy record, which is Blizzard of Oz." Right. But give this to your brother. He really likes Ozzy. I'm like, okay. Right. I don't think I gave it to my brother for like 3 or 4 days. I just kept staring at it and
A little
reading.
bit of a delay, just a
Yeah.
delay.
So with that, I remember that I was able to sneak into his room because he had a record player, and I put the record on and just sat there and listened to the whole record. And I just like it blew my mind. And I think the thing that sticks out the most is that my uncle was talking about that record. He mentioned he's like that guitar player had just passed away. He was just in a plane crash, right? And it's like that, this album's going to be worth something one day or something because it was brand new at the time, right? So he's like, yeah, give that your brother, it'll be worth something. A guitar player just died, right? Kind of thing. So that kind of, piqued my interest too. I'm like, oh man, that sucks. This guy just died. So having that in my mind and then listening to that record and hearing those guitar parts and kind of just starting to understand what guitar was and all that, right? That just absolutely sealed the deal for me. Like, I need to play guitar. This guy is my favorite guitar player and probably will be forever, and just listen through over and over and over again. And the tunes just totally stuck out to me. Like the guitar work is phenomenal. And it's like the whole record is really phenomenal. Like Bob Daisley with his writing and with Ozzy's melodies and stuff. It was like to believe that record was done, like written, recorded, and done and mixed in 30 days, rushed, and then out, and to get those guys on the road for the Diary of a Madman tour in the US is just, it still blows my mind. It is an absolute masterpiece, especially the song Diary of a Madman itself. It is Randy Rhoads's, like Here I Am. This is what I do. It's an absolute masterpiece.
And that's the final song on the album, I believe, Diary of a Madman. It's a long one, right? It's like 6 minutes or something.
Yeah, almost 7, I think. Yeah. So it's a wonderful tune. It's like, and that's the thing, that album sparked my love for like the spooky interlude. So any metal band or rock band that does that kind of breakdown, basically getting away from the song a little bit and creating like those cool little interludes, that hooks me every time, as long as it's good. And I love that. And I think it's from that record because there's a couple instances on that record, and sometimes there's just the guitar solos, but that take the song in a totally different direction. But it is like in Diver Madman, there's that interlude and that breakdown with the strings and Ozzy, right, with those lyrics, and it's haunting. It's him talking to himself and trying to save himself from himself. And it's like, pretty crazy, and it's so quintessential Ozzy, like, the heavy metal Madman. It's just, the song is absolutely perfect.
So Ozzy Osbourne, Diary of a Madman, this comes out in 1981. Are you saying that you actually didn't play guitar before owning this album?
Oh no, that's what made me want to play guitar at 7 years old, right? Because I only heard it. Yeah, I only heard it, maybe it was late 82, 83. And then I started playing guitar in 87 because I begged for a guitar for Christmas for about 3 years, right? But you got to think, a 7-year-old at that time, just like, what are we getting for Christmas? A little Tonka truck and all that stuff, or a wrestling action figure or something like that. And I'm asking my mom to go spend $400, right? So it was only after like the 3 years or whatever, and I was 11, or I just said to my mom, it's like, and my buddy across the street got a guitar. I'm like, I need a guitar. Like, yeah, please get me one for Christmas. So, I got a little Fender Strat copy and a little tiny, 3-watt amp, and I was off and running. And I actually got in my stocking that year the Ozzy Osbourne, Randy Rhoads tribute on cassette. So I could get a guitar and that record, or, at the same time, or cassette. So that was all hand in hand. That was me, cassette player, trying to do what I could to pick out little notes. And that's what started me on my guitar journey. So
That's amazing. So without this album, maybe you don't play guitar, or maybe you don't start as early as you did.
yeah, or maybe without that album or a couple other ones that we'll mention, I wouldn't maybe got into music at all, as a profession. I think that's the thing. I was always into music, right? And hearing things like, Queen and Led Zeppelin and all that. And just, and my mom, spinning records. It was like Elton John, Beatles, and she loved the Bee Gees and all that stuff, and so music was always around. It was always getting played, but I don't know if I would have gone into it as a life journey and as an absolute passion in my career path without that record.
So a few episodes ago, I did the 5 favorite albums with John Wysocki, the original drummer from Stained, and he chose Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz. So what's awesome is I got to do a deep dive into Ozzy and that album not too long ago. So it's like I'm going through the whole history of Ozzy, and what's cool is Ozzy has all these albums over the years since then, but the two choices are the first and the second album, the two albums with Randy Rhoads, to show how much of an impact he had.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's great. You're fully schooled on Randy Rhoads now. Listen to those 2 records, right? So that's a good thing. But yeah, it's just without Randy and without those 2 records in that short period of time, like who knows if Ozzy even would have been anything, honestly. Like Ozzy has his own merit, and he was successful with Black Sabbath, and he had a big fan base, but it really was, Randy Rhoads in conjunction with like Bob Daisley that made his career. Like if he picked the wrong guys and just, and then the record label didn't like the record and he would have got dropped, who knows? He probably would have drank himself to death, right? In that hotel room that he was in when he met Randy Rhoads through Dana Strum from the band Slaughter, went and, got Ozzy from his hotel room and brought him down to the studio, and, and he was a mess. And, if that didn't all happen, who knows?
Yeah, all of music history would have shifted. So it's hard to think about. So this album, there's only 8 songs, so it's just straight to the point, all killer, no filler. And then another album you have on the list is Metallica's Master of Puppets, which is also just 8 songs. Dan, is 8 songs the perfect amount for an album?
I guess. Well, that's the thing. That was the length of like an LP back then. They couldn't really, depending on the song lengths. Right. And you got to think songs were a little bit longer back then, right? Too, right? So they can only fit a certain amount of songs on the actual record LP, right? So it's kind of cool going back and listening to those and how short they are. It is kind of like you said, all killer, no filler. It's short and sweet, and the songs just pound out. They're done 8 songs. You're not listening to, 14, 15, 16 songs, right? Like when was the thing when CD came around, the band started putting out some 15, 16 songs. It's almost be too much, right?
Yeah, so a CD you can have like 80 minutes or 84 minutes or something, and Tool literally goes down to like the final 17 seconds. They use up the entire amount to show people taking advantage of the runtime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting, just how that that media format and how it changed kind of the landscape of how bands approach records and what they can do. It's I kind of like that old format of just like 8-10 songs, and in and out and done. But that's just because of what I grew up on, right? You know, and that's what I got used to. But all
It
good.
it seems like the album cycles nowadays, or for the last while, it's about two years. Like you release an album, you tour behind it, and then after 2 years, you release the next one and you restart. Back in the day, it's like, man, bands were releasing an album like every year and a half. And I wonder if the shorter, like 8-song album helped that it's less songs, so more frequently you're releasing the albums. Do you think there's any truth to that?
I think there is, but you got to think too, and especially when you go back and read about how these bands like approach these records and what they were doing, right? A lot of them did write 12, 13, 15 songs, right? And pick the best 8 or 9, right? So they're still writing a good amount of tunes, but I think because of that pressure being off, like, you know, and just if a band was able to, you know, it's like definitely these 8 songs, like there was, and that's all that we can fit on the record. It's like those are the definite 8. Like there was nothing. It's not like they, you know, had some choices of a couple of songs that were kind of maybe filler or that they wrote in the studio or were kind of last minute, you know, kind of thing. So definitely, I think it hasn't had an effect on it for sure. Yeah.
So the album had 3 singles: "Flying High Again," "Over the Mountain," and "Tonight." It sells over 3 million copies, so it's a big hit. I wanted to share a quick review that All Music had. They said it's not uncommon to find fans who prefer Diary to Blizzard, since it sets an even more mystical, eerie mood, and since Rhodes' playing is progressing to an even higher level. Do you agree with that, of this album over Blizzard?
Somewhat. This is always a hard choice for me because I love it all, right? To go back to Blizzard for a second, there is some like just crazy song, like Crazy Train, like Mr. Crowley, Goodbye to Romance, like, you know, and his guitar work, like Revelation Mother Earth, like just an absolute opus of guitar amazingness, right? You know, and you listen to those layers, right? The one thing that Diary did, it's almost just like you said, it brought a mystique, and there's an energy there, and I think that has all to do with the short time frame that they had to do that record. Because you think about it, like Ozzy brought Randy over to England and lived with him for a year and wrote this record, you know, started writing, and then Bob Daisley getting involved, you know, about halfway through, and starting to get on writing lyrics and melodies with Ozzy and stuff, and finalizing that record. So they had a full year versus 30 days, you know, to basically get in the studio, write some songs for a couple of weeks and lay them down. Right. So there is an energy and an aura to that. And that is Randy just laying it all on the line, you know, like, cause he knew that pressure was on him. That's the thing that's, you know, I think all good musicians that have the right, you know, headspace do well under pressure. You know, I know, you know, some of my best shows I've done, you know, playing wise and mostly doing live sound front of house is when I'm under pressure and we have limited time, because I just go in there and just, you know, heave ho, get that gear set up in like 10 minutes, get it to front of house, and there's an energy to it. So I totally agree with that statement that, you know, that there is an elevated aura to the Diver Madman record. Even still with that, like some of the guitar solos on there, like Randy wasn't overly happy with, you know, he's like, they're fine for what it is. He would have loved to have done more, but basically there's a couple of solos on there that are just, they're ghost solos. He laid it down, say, okay, that's where I'm going to do a solo.
It's a placeholder for now.
Placeholder, right? Like the end of Tonight, the song Tonight on that record, it's just him ripping, and he's like, okay, that's fine, and we'll, you know, I'll get back to it. I didn't have time to get back to it. So, and that's the thing, that song fades out. If you keep popping the volume up as that song's fading out, and you got to watch it before the next tune comes in. But you hear at the very end, he's just going for it. And it's almost, it's like some of Randy's best, because he's just ripping and it's perfect. And the notes are amazing. And it's like screaming at you. It's awesome.
So in doing my research for the Blizzard of Oz deep dive, I learned all this stuff about Randy Rhodes, and I actually commented, you had posted something about Randy Rhodes, I think, or Ozzy, and I had put in, oh my God, I learned that, I thought I like stumped you, you know, I'm like, oh my God, did you know that Randy Rhodes at 16 started the band Quiet Riot that has gone on to be a huge metal band? I had no idea. And you're like, buddy, Like anything Randy Rhoads, I know. So I didn't know that. So the question is, how insane is it that between the ages of 16 and 25, when he passes away, he starts Quiet Riot, that goes on to be a huge metal band selling millions of albums. He does, I believe, 2 albums with them. And then he does the two quintessential Ozzy Osbourne albums. And with his guitar playing on the Ozzy albums and Crazy Train, he basically popularized that two-handed tapping style of guitar along with Eddie Van Halen around that time. How crazy is it what he accomplished in such a small time frame in his life?
Well, it's absolutely nuts, and that's why he's an absolute legend. When he died, he was still a kid, basically. As I'm a 48-year-old dude now, looking back, he's just a kid. Starting Quiet Riot at 16. This is the thing, they really pounded the pavement too, and as you remember, maybe if you've done any research on that, like they got a small record deal out of Japan, but they really they were pounding the pavement to no record deal and to minimal success other than local Hollywood scene. They were rock stars in Hollywood, right? So that's a thing for Randy to leave that, and and there's lots of stories about how it broke his heart to do that, because that was his baby band. He started it with Kevin DeBro, and it upset them all. But Randy, there's a calling for him. I think he knew that, and he had to take that chance. And but it is crazy to think that he started that all up, went to Ozzy, did 2 records right quick. Unfortunately dies. And those records have gone on to be absolute legendary records that'll never go away, that changed the landscape of hard rock and metal, especially in the 80s and beyond. And that's the thing. And with Quiet Riot, that story, that Randy was in that band, I'm sure that's what led to, a bit of their popularity and push in the record label, signing them, is that they were, basically placed in the scene because of that, that name, and Randy Rhoads being tied to that, and went on to great success, So it's nuts to think of what that guy did in 10 years is what, a lot of other guitar players can do in multiple lifetimes.
So I have a couple reviews about the album, and then we'll move on to a different choice. So BBC Music referred to the album as a classic rock record in every way, lifted out of the ordinary by the legendary rock axe god Randy Rhoads. And then Canadian journalist Martin Popoff called Diary of a Madman a lasting classic that stands as the definitive showcase for Randy Rhoads. And then Rolling Stone placed it at number 15 on its list of 100 greatest metal albums of all time. So that's what I got for Ozzy Osbourne, Diary of a Madman. And I guess my last question is, you've seen Ozzy live before, obviously not with Randy Rhoads because of how long ago he passed away and how young you were. But what was it like seeing Ozzy live, who was like a hero of yours growing up? How early did you see him?
First Ozzy show, I was 13, I believe. Hold on, let me do the math here. Yeah, I think it was 12 or 13. Yeah, I went with my brother down to CNE Grandstand, and it was Zakk Wylde's first tour. So Zakk was 20. I'm a little year-old kid, and so it was the No Rest for the Wicked tour with White Lion opening. Another fantastic guitar player, Vito Bratta. Yeah, just when Ozzy came out, I'm seeing my brain just, I'm like, there he is. Like, I'm a 13-year-old kid, and then Zakk coming out, and very easy to tell who he is, right? Because he had the long blonde hair, very kind of Randy Rhoads look alike, and that's why I liked him too, right? And he was a Randy freak, and he had that Randy aura a little bit about him, and the bullseye guitar, Les Paul, right? So he came out, and I'd already listened to that record, probably 1,000 times before I saw that show. So yeah, that's probably life changing at that point. I think I'd been to a couple of concerts already. I think it was at Bon Jovi once already, and I saw Cinderella, if you remember them back in the 80s. So it was probably my 3rd concert ever, and just mind blowing to see Ozzy live. Like, he's a legend, he's the king of heavy metal, right? And so,
and you've seen him like 10 times or something. You've seen him a bunch.
I think I told you 10 earlier, but I probably 15 or 16 times like since then. I don't think I missed one show. He did Osmosis tour, and he was playing at the Government, which is a small venue for him because it's all about arenas. But I think that's the grunge era and all stuff. And Osmosis was not big splash record for him, right? So he was playing at the Government, and I missed that show. I was away or I was working or something, So I've only missed one.
It's funny when you say, I've seen him probably 10 times. It sounds like someone's probably exaggerating, but you're actually underselling it, that you had seen him actually quite a bit more than that.
Probably have. I got to count them, but it's probably more, a dozen or more.
So I've seen Ozzy, but it was when Rick Rubin brought Black Sabbath out of retirement for that 13 album. So I saw Black Sabbath live in Ottawa with Ozzy. So that's the only time I've seen him.
Yeah, that was cool too. I remember going to see that, and I actually saw it was the 98 reunion, I believe, 98 or 99, the first one. And that concert was at Skydome with Pantera and Deftones opening.
Wow, Deftones too.
Yeah, well, crazy show. Unbelievable, because Pantera, like, Deftones are great. Pantera came out and just lit it up. And and then it comes Black Sabbath, and like the chandeliers come down, the song Black Sabbath plays, the bell goes, there's like the smoke, and then Ozzy just raises out of the ground, right? This microphone, just like goosebumps. I'm getting them now, right? Thinking about it, like, yeah. So yeah, Ozzy's the man. He's always been a pillar of my respect, and I love for the whole industry kind of evolves around him, because he's just the craziest heavy metal entertainer that's ever existed, and no one's ever going to change that.